Hey, what's going on, everybody? Dr. Homebrew, we are back. We have 2 homebrewed beers. Enough with this mead talk. It's meads on the last show. Let's get back to grain-based, homebrewed, I don't know, whatever. But if you want to be on the show, like all good homebrewers should, they should email brian@thebrewingnetwork.com, and you will be speaking with Mr. Brian Cooper, who is Grandmaster BJCP judge. And so you can bombard him with any sort of spam. If you want to sign him up for like weird emailing lists or whatever, please feel free to do that. But also, if you want to be on the show, email brian@thebrewingnetwork.com and he'll get you booked on the show. Send us a couple beers. It's easy process, painless, I promise.
Or you can send me your comments.
Or if you're in the Bay Area, we can maybe figure out a way to, get beers delivered. I don't know, whatever you want to do. We'll meet you somewhere. But yeah, come on the show and we'll hang out, we'll drink your beers and we'll judge them. And, it'll be a good time.
I would love to email you something really tough to dig through and long and wordy.
I had you on mute, Cooper. So
man,
I didn't mean, I forgot that Jason's beer was black.
Okay.
So
I was going to say too, though, if you want to email me, you can also email me on the BJCP page. You can find me as one of the officers. I'm the West Coast representative. So if you live in California, Nevada, or Hawaii, you can email me and send me any issues or questions you have about the beer judge certification program. We're going to be meeting at NHC in Pittsburgh next month, starting less than a month from now, and have actual real meetings and stuff there, and talk about things the BJCP is doing. And so we're trying to work on making some improvements, and I really like to listen to our members and on that side of things too, and really our heart's in the right place. I admit it's a slow moving ship, but we do want the best for it. And we're working to make incremental improvements on that side of things too. So, we can talk about a lot of different things.
That sounds beautiful, dude. I wasn't paying attention. I was playing with my light. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So say that again. Kidding.
Complain about the BJCP.
It's a slow moving ship.
Yeah,
come to the meeting. It's always fun.
But you know what's not a slow moving ship is the way to clean and sanitize your home brewing equipment. And I don't know what that segue was about, but 5starchemicals.com. That is what cleaning and sanitizing is all about. I just used them again when I brewed recently last month, and it was a dream. It's easy. It's always super easy with 5-Star. You go to 5starchemicals.com and learn about the best ways to clean and sanitize your equipment, especially that nasty ass fermenter you got. We all got one where the valve is like, I don't know, man. Maybe like the spigot. It's fine. Everything's fine. It's never fine. Take that dumb thing apart, fucking clean it, let it soak in some PBW, even overnight if you want, whatever you want to do. Yeah, there you go.
I agree. I need to take apart my spigot and really do some work on it.
Yeah,
because I'm sure that's gnarly in there.
Absolutely. And you know what? Also, even on like your ball valves on your pumps, even though you think it sees hot side action, the butterfly valves are the best. But the ball valves, it's a cup. You don't always get every single side of that ball valve. So you take those ball valves apart too, rinse them in PBW. Don't just run it through the PBW, or don't just run it through the ball valves. Take the things apart. Do some maintenance on this stuff. Trust me, you'll find little boogers.
How do you feel about like homebrew scale heat exchangers?
Oh God. Man, at More Beer, we tried not selling them for a long time because it's like, no, these can't be cleaned. And even the manufacturer, like the first people were like, no, these are made for like cruise ships to cool their water down quickly. They're not made to pass like solids through because they get stuck in the things. But yeah, nobody listened, and here we are.
So if you took one of those things and sliced them in half with a hacksaw and you saw what was inside, I bet you'd be astounded.
Oh yeah, it's like they're honeycombs, and so like they come together at 45s or 90, not 90s, 45s or less. You know what I mean? You can shove a dental pick in there and it'll get stuck in there. They're bad.
But, yeah. Since that's what the pros use, homebrewers want it too. Like just like the conical fermenters on a homebrew scale, from what I understand, when I was taking classes in Davis, Charlie Bamforth and Michael Lewis, they're like conicals on a giant, massive commercial scale. You get that turnover that it keeps the beer circulating. It flows down and up the sides. But on a homebrew scale, it's too small to really do that. I mean, it's nice because you can take the yeast out the bottom and stuff, but there's minor benefits. But having a really nice conical isn't much better than just having a glass fermenter or a whatever shape fermenter.
Yeah, as
They
far
do
as
look
like
cooler.
fermentation, they do look cooler and they're easy to use. And if you drop it, it's not going to explode and slice an artery.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
never use a glass. Never use a glass.
I always use the
carboy,
brew haulers, and
Yeah, it's I like the conicals because you can cool it and whatever, and you can dump it, and I like all the valves and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, as far as like fermentation science, it's probably not the best. It's way better than kegs. People are still trying to use like 5-gallon kegs to ferment. It's like those don't. No, man, honey, baby, don't do that.
I remember when the plate chillers first hit the market, probably like 2010-ish, 2008-ish, something like that.
Yeah.
And thinking, oh, hell no. There's no way I was ever going to do it because you either have to take the whole thing apart every time, or there are people that were like, oh, yeah, there you go. Or you got to put it in the oven. Like some people are standby. And I guess that's the one point about like, you talk about 5-star and like you can't sanitize shit. Well, maybe if you've baked it and there's no bacteria left.
That's exactly right. And I remember that. Jason, what do you do with your plate chill? You just held up, was it a Blickman one?
No, this is a Duda diesel.
Okay. And how do you sanitize that bad boy?
So what I do is I got a small micron mesh filter that I put on the outlet of it. I flush a whole bunch of water through it while I'm cleaning my fermenters to capture all the particles in it. And then I'll back flush it out, do the same thing, catch all the particles. Then I'll run PBW through it, and then another hot water rinse, and then star sand.
Okay. And when you catch in the particles, do you find a lot of smeg coming out of there?
Not real. Most of what I find coming out is like grain husk.
Interesting.
Okay. All right.
But that's what you have to do. I mean, Jason's doing it right. And for listeners at home, if you're going to use a plate chiller, like any tool, it's a tool, and you have to understand what its limitations are and what its maintenance requirements are. And if you think you can just plate chill and then just like, oh, I'm tired, I'm going to put it away, and then just maybe run a little PBW through it and then use it next time, you're gonna be having a bad time.
Yeah.
You've got to understand what's happening there. And to use a plate chiller at a homebrew level, or even at a commercial level, you've got to clean that thing real good, multiple steps, like Jason just talked about.
And you've got to be on it pretty quick. You can't be lazy like me. It's like, oh, I'm done homebrew. I'm gonna go sleep and watch some TV or have another beer.
I want to spend some time with my kids, or I want to do whatever. No, you have to be on it, and you have to deal with it before it hardens or even gets like kind of syrupy.
Congealed. Yeah.
Forgot about baking it. Actually, that was a thing. God,
but then you're baking it, and you got the schmeg in there still. It's not gonna, it's gonna just be baked schmeg that you're running stuff through.
But anyway, Jason, welcome back, dude.
Thank you. And I was going to say too, if you have some extra money, both Granger and Sabco do sell homebrew scale plate and frames.
Interesting.
It was
Granger sells everything.
I mean, when I was researching these at More Beer, it was like 2003, 2004 or whatever. There was a company that was making it, but they were like $600 our cost. And it's like, I can't, no, homebrewers aren't going to pay that. And this was back before, this is like when people were like, oh God, a conical? I don't know, that's really expensive. But now I think if you have a piece of $300 homebrew equipment, you're like, yeah, okay, cool. It makes sense. So it does not surprise me at all that we have small plate and frame chillers at all.
Oh.
Good for them. What are we drinking today, Jason? What did you send us, man?
All right. So I sent you, when I'm doing recipe development, I try to not do any clones of commercial beers or anything like that. There's really only 3 beers that draw inspiration when I brew from commercial beers. I make like a West Coast version of England since I can't get it out here, and no one can, unfortunately. Rogue used to make a maple bacon beer that they did in collaboration. with Voodoo Donuts, which I really
Voodoo
loved.
Yeah,
But
I
they only
remember
made,
that.
like, one batch of it. So I
Yeah.
kind of made a version of that, but made it a rye IPA. And then this beer is a smoked Belgian IPA. It originally started out as somewhat of my attempt to clone Raging Bitch from Flying Dog.
Flying Dog. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's also kind of reminiscent of the Stones Belco and no, Kelly Belgique from Stone and Belco from Northern Brewer, which are no longer, or Northern Brewer from
You'll get it.
Fat Tire Brewery. That's not their
There
name.
we go. There we
Yeah.
go. Belgium.
I always
Belgium.
liked the Kelly Belgique a lot.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I wanted to make it my own. So it turned into a smoked Belgian IPA.
Okay.
Kind of with a little bit of a throwback to the Raging Bitch. And this is, I've been working on this recipe for maybe 8-10 years or so.
Wow.
Never really found a smoke profile that I liked on it, despite trying various smoke levels and pretty much every smoked malt you can get commercially in the US. So
Yeah, because it's hard because you have phenols on phenols.
yeah.
So that is a hard balance to do. And when I read this label, I was like, oh shit.
This is going to be a train wreck.
This is going to be very challenging to do. But
Yeah.
I smelled it,
It's-
and it definitely smells a lot better than I thought it would. So I'm excited to drink it.
It's almost there. I'm maybe a batch or two away, I think, from
Okay.
getting it down. But
What do you need from us? Do you want help coasting that last 20%, or just general feedback about your general direction, or just nothing? You're just hanging out.
yeah, both. Just how to get that final way to what's gonna make it, an awesome beer, and then
Awesome beer. Okay.
general feedback on the flavor profile and sensory and everything.
Okay. All right. I think we can do that. Cooper, why don't you dive in first, brother?
All right. I'm pouring it. It's a little bit cold right now. So I just took it out 10 minutes ago. So it might take a little more effort to get this out and warm it with my hands as much as I can. But I warmed it to a good judging temperature the other night when I prejudged this. So in the nose, you get a pleasant combination of subtle smoke with prominent hop aromas and Belgianese character all coming through. The hops are citrusy and tropical, nice and, high, in combination with the other things. They'd have to be fairly high to come through where they are. It's got a light kind of white pepper like phenol that comes through. You can really smell that alongside the smoke phenols. But it's mellow. It's not too much. It's just it's cleanly fermented. I'm not getting any DMS or DAS at all. And the overall phenol level is kind of medium low. It's not too intense or sharp, which I like. So gave it 8 out of 12 for aroma. Sorry. Appearance wise, it's pretty, really pretty, brilliantly clear, gold colored beer, nice white head, starts medium, sticks around very well, mostly finer bubbles. I couldn't complain about the appearance at all. 3 points for appearance. Getting into the flavor, it's a pleasant medium low smoked malt up front, alongside a medium low bitterness and a medium high hop component. Again, citrusy. I got a little floral in the flavor and some tropical. Moderately dry finish, as an IPA should have. It doesn't seem sweet at all. It seems fairly dry, but it's not bone dry. Clean Belgian ale type ferment with nice fruitiness and a light peppery phenolic. It really doesn't seem to fight with the hops from the smoke, which I liked. Nothing is too much here, but it's all kind of in balance. And I can tell you're trying to dial something in here. It's really, I can tell this is a tricky balancing act. I'm gonna let it a 14 out of 20 on the flavor. Mouthfeel wise, medium light bodied. It's got a medium carbonation. It's nice that there's no astringency here. There's I got just a touch of alcohol warmth. Not any kind of creamy quality to it. It's smooth though for a rich, big smoky creation here. But yeah, kind of where it should be for an IPA, 4 out of 5. Overall impression, everything plays pretty nicely together here, and so I would never think that concocting such a combination would yield something palatable and fun. This beer achieves that. Hops came through quite nicely, and I'm a kind of person who likes a lot of hops. When I'm getting an IPA, I want to have a lot of hops and notice that, and I do. So definitely good hop selections. And somehow the fruitiness also melds with the fruity aspect of the hops too, which I like. The malt quality is very subdued. You're not getting a big malty sweetness or any kind of caramelly character in here. And I like that for the IPA, the Belgian IPA style too. And also I find, going back to the hops, I find that when you ferment the same 2 worts with the Belgian yeast and a clean American Chico yeast, the Belgian yeast somehow just drags away from that hoppiness. And I don't know how you did it, but this one has the hoppiness, which I really like. So, you don't really want the malt to poke through anymore. And the hops are kind of a nice place. I don't know. I landed at I should probably come up a little bit. I landed at a 37 on this, but I give 8 out of 10 for overall impression. I think I want more hops because I always want more hops, but I know how hard it is to get that in this beer.
You want more hops?
I do.
agree with them.
The hops are at a nice level, and it's really, really good. I like so for a smoked beer, I like the level that the smoke is at, but I tend to like less smoky beers. So I would like the smoke just a tiny touch more subtle, but I think that the character of the smoked malt is really nice. But I would just a tiny, tiny fraction of, not making a wild adjustment there. The smoke level is nice, and it's got to stand up to all those hops that you have in here too. And I don't know, if you went too overpowering with everything, it would just be a phenol bomb, and it's not. So it's really nice. I should probably land it more like a 39-ish for this. I don't know. As I'm tasting it again, it's really refreshing. Do I want to drink? Is it the beer for me? Do I want to drink pints and pints of this? No, but for what it's declared as, it's really good. As you could say, excellent, I guess. If it's 38 plus, you're in excellent territory. I'll give you at least 38. I'll change it right now.
Well, there you
Add a
go.
point somewhere. So yeah, thank you for that.
All right, Shar, you're up.
Yes. So Jason, you've been on the show before, so we know whether you are or not. But for our listeners who may not have heard previous episodes, I have to ask you: are you in a homebrew club?
Yeah, I'm still the sole member of the Eastern Oregon Society for the Advancement of the Zymergetic Arts. So
Nice. Well, hey, being the only member of any group has a lot of a few disadvantages, but a lot of advantages because you can be in charge of everything.
No one to tell me I suck and I'm doing everything wrong. So.
What feedback sessions are short and the presentations are all on you.
What would someone do though if they wanted to join this club? Could we join your club? Is it open for membership?
Yeah, if you so desire. Just just go to the AHA maintains I did register with the AHA, so it's an official club or whatever.
Nice.
So you just go on the AHA's website and search for club. Select Oregon as your state. I'm out in Eastern Oregon. Canyon City is the name of the town.
I don't think it'd be fair for us to join just to give you more members. If there's someone out in your area that really wants to learn more about brewing, they would do well to speak with you, sir. So that's all.
Dues are $1,000 a year. No, it would be hilarious though, Brian. Maybe you and I should join this club because it would be like a 3-person club. It'd be you, me, and Jason, and that would be hilarious.
And that's like 300% growth in an immediate time frame. Yeah.
Exactly.
We just trade beers over FedEx and UPS and make them a bunch of money.
Like once a year, we make a big ass road trip up to Canyon City, and I think that would be awesome. So, thank you for sharing. I really like this beer a lot. So, thank you for sharing. I really love the idea. Like we were talking earlier, I loved that Cali Belgique from Stone, and I think that the Belgian yeast, which is highly phenolic, and the smoky malt, which is highly phenolic, really pair well together. And it's so tricky to do because phenol can so easily go over the top into being plastic or Band-Aid or medicinal, or just somehow get to be really unpleasant. And even for really good smoky beers, they don't hit a lot of people's palates right, because a lot of people are just super sensitive to phenols. And even like something smoked is going to hit them wrong. So it's a brave choice, but it's a choice that really works well. Aroma, the Belgian yeast phenol aromas plus the smoke from the smoked malt dominate the aroma. They're very harmonious. They're independent and they work very well together. There's a low malt aroma. Low esters, although I may have talked myself into the presence of some kind of esters. I couldn't really detect a hop aroma just because of the intensity of the smoke. And I'm kind of, it's great radio for me to stop talking and to go back and smell. But as it warms, I notice the flavor, I get a little bit more hop flavor. I do get like a little bit of a hop aroma, like a very low hop aroma, almost like Cooper was talking about, almost a floral type of hop aroma. Now that this bottle's been sitting out now for about 3 hours in my kitchen, which is probably at about like 70, 71 degrees. So higher than cellar temperature, but not like hot. But it's enough to let me get a little bit of hop aroma where I didn't get it before. But 8 out of 12 for aroma. Appearance is 3 out of 3. It's crystal clear. And I should go back on my Zoom here for purposes of later whatever. I should know I can't, but don't worry. If I put this thing up here, you can see the Golden Gate Bridge, but you can see it's crystal clear. There's a low persistent head, which at this point after a few hours it's not persisting, but the head is long and persistent. It's a golden color, again 3 out of 3. The flavor, initially the flavor is medium malt and smokiness with kind of a low fruity ester. And I was debating, even when I wrote this maybe a couple hours ago, whether what I was thinking of as a fruity ester was really an ester or if it was maybe a hop flavor, kind of like with the aroma. And it's one of those things where some hop varietals, where you have a beer like this that is so dominant in one character, and it's intentionally so, right? This is intentionally a smoke dominant beer. Sometimes some of the supporting flavors and aromas, it can be hard to tell where they're coming from. And I think that what I was thinking of as a fruity ester may actually have been maybe more of a fruity hop character. And as I'm drinking this now, I'm thinking more that that's a hop flavor, like maybe not, because this beer is not going to be a really estery beer. It's supposed to be an IPA, and I'm thinking this is maybe more like Cooper was talking about, maybe more of a tropical sort of fruity hop flavor more than an ester, which makes a lot more sense for what this beer is. So I'm going to change that on the fly and say, and I even made a note off of my score sheet, or is it hops? For this ester thing, I'm going to say that's a hop flavor, almost a berry-like flavor. And that was my first note, and I stand by that. It is kind of a berry-like character, and some hops can have kind of a berry type, tropical type character. I'm going to call that a hop flavor. I think that this flavor is is very harmonious. Everything about this. The yeast character, because Belgian yeast have a very distinctive phenolic, almost smoky well, it's but a very distinctive phenolic character, and the smoke really marries well as sort of a subset of phenol with that.
Can we guess hops? Should we guess?
Oh, yes. I can tell you one of them is an experimental hop that recently became commercial from.
Well, tell us later.
Over an
I'm going to guess Mosaic, because Mosaic tends to be a blueberry type of berry hop. I'm probably wrong. I'm guessing Mosaic. If I hit it, man, I am just the shit. And if not, I am shit. So there you go.
He's shaking his head. Oh well.
No, John Jason. Oh, he's already shaking his head for Mosaic. It's not going to be Mosaic. The finish is long and smoky. It's very well attenuated. Medium to high bitterness. I give this 15 out of 20 for flavor. I really enjoy this. Much like that pomegranate mead from the first show we did tonight, I'm drinking this entire bottle of smoked Belgian IPA. I'm not pouring any of this out. This is real good. Mouthfeel 5 out of 5. Medium body. Carbonation is medium. There's a low warming. There's a slight what I perceive as astringency that I don't think is astringency from the smokiness and the bitterness, but it's not a bad astringency. It's more like, again, I think it's more not a mouthfeel, but more of a flavor. And I think it's appropriate for what this beer is. So I'm not knocking any points off, and I'm giving this a 5 out of 5 for mouthfeel.
I would call it just like that, the lightly ashy quality that you get from any smoked phenolic. They're just kind of like a little tongue, leatheriness or something. Not
that's
really
correct.
Leathery, but something like that.
I think it's totally correct. I mean, you're not going to give a Schlenker La Rauch beer a 3 out of 5. I mean, when it's the defining beer for smoke beer, it's a 50-pointer. You're not going to knock that off for having a slight, perceived astringency, quote unquote, when that's the nature of that style of beer, right? So that's, I kind of note that, but to me, that's totally what this beer is part and parcel of what this beer is about. Overall impression, 8 out of 10. For a total score of 39, I gave a total score, JP. So it's a 39, which is an excellent beer. I think it's really a good idea. Matching, sometimes when you're coming up with something creative, you match things that are different together to create a balance. Sometimes you match like with like, kind of like with this beer, because they're different kinds of phenol, and they're going to meld well together. The smoked malt works really well with the Belgian yeast character. The hop flavor doesn't quite stand out as much as you might want it to in an IPA, but it really can't. And Cooper was talking about this. You can put some more hops in here I think the bitterness is probably about fine. In terms of flavor, you can try to put more in, but I think it's always going to come in second place to the smoke. And that's okay. It can still be an IPA and not rip your face off with hop flavor or hop bitterness. That's okay for this style. I might try to put a few more in, but otherwise, I don't really have a lot of additional suggestions. It's excellent. It's very tasty. Again, I'm drinking this whole bottle before. None of this is getting poured out. And I really appreciate you sharing. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I got some things to say. I got some shit to talk to you about, Jason.
All right, let's do it, man.
You got some splaining to do here.
Yeah, I mean it is a smoked Belgian beer on steroids. It is very, very smoky, and without getting into all the details, because what fun is that? Personally I think it's either too bitter or too smoky. And the problem with this style, that Belgo smoky IPA thing, is like Belgian IPAs typically don't do well because of the hop bitterness, and those esters from the Belgian yeasts tend to clash. But then you add smoke on top of that, like hoppy, smoky beers tend to not really do very well because of that same thing too. So you have
the phenols,
the phenols. Yeah. So you have hops and the phenols from the yeast, which clash, and then you have the phenols from the smoke, which clash with both of those other items. So you have like a trifecta of things that don't necessarily traditionally work well. I think you are on a path to what you want to drink, and that's the important thing. Let's just not forget about that at all. But for me personally, I think it's too bitter and it's too smoky. And if you're like me, I mean, being a home brewer, you know, we sort of want to just put more shit in it and like, oh, well, maybe if I fix it, I can up this if I reduce this or whatever. I think on both the hops and the yeast, or the hops and the smoke, I think you need to come back. I think you need to dial back on both of those because it's too, I think it's too astringent. It's too, not astringent, but it's too
biting.
It's too, it's too aggressive for me personally. And if you like it, then whatever. But for me, it's, and then that smoke is, Cooper, I think you were saying like you don't get that ashy quality that you can with smoke beer. I definitely get that.
Oh, I got a little bit of ash. Yeah.
And I don't like that in smoke beers. I like a sort of more soft, rounder, sweeter smoke. So
have you ever had the
suggestion,
the Schlenkerla Helles? Like that's a really nice example of a smoke beer where the base style and the smoke level and quality are just balanced perfectly.
I agree.
Like that, however, you can taste Helles, you can taste smoke, and it's light, and it works.
And in here, I can taste smoke, and I get hop bitterness, and then somewhere underneath that third is malt. And I don't think that should be the case.
So you're saying that you just think that this beer is a bad idea?
I'm trying to say that in a nice way.
It's almost, JP, like you don't care for IPA.
Well, it's
there's a shocker. Wait till he hears the ABV.
Shit. Well,
12.3.
What I'd be interested in trying is the base beer also. And I know it's impossible to do necessarily, but like, I wonder if just the base beer in and of itself is too bitter for me. And that's why it's not meshing. And again, it could be just me. And if you like it, you know, whatever.
Yeah, I'm not.
I think it's too. I would probably start with, and I'd be interested to hear about your path with this after we get your recipe about how you've dialed the smoke in, if you're increasing it or decreasing it. I think if you just pull the smoke back 20% and went with everything the same, I think I would have a much better time with it. Which is really all that matters.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I kind of do agree that that's a little bit too smoky. It's like I know JP's probably had the guard because he interviewed him on the session, but it's kind of like their beers with the sourness, but with smoke. You know, you have to have a half a pint for it to dull your taste receptors.
Right.
Like a Schlenkerla, which is the style defining beer. I love Schlenkerla, but I've got to drink one pint of that before my palate readjusts, and I really enjoy the second pint, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yep. You might need to go to Bamberg and drink beers there for a while and learn from some of the brewers there how to make those delicately balanced smoked beers. Because
have the club.
One of these days I'm going to Bamberg for like a week, and I say one of these days I'm getting older, and I better do that in the next like 20 years, or I'm going to die.
Yeah, I mean, you know. Anyway, Jason, what? Let's hit your recipe real fast.
All right. So we'll start with the malt. So 5% Gladfield Manuka smoked malt, which is hell of expensive in the U.S. because no.
Wait, back up. You are saying words that I don't understand at all. What is Gladfield Manuka smoked malt?
So Gladfield's a malt stir over in New Zealand. They sell on a limited basis here in the U.S. to commercial brewers. If you want any of their malt at a homebrew scale, you got to order it from Australia.
Wow.
So turns out 5 kilos costs more than a 50-pound bag of base malt.
Jesus Christ. What kind of wood, what kind of smoke is that? Do you know what kind of wood they smoke that over?
Manuka.
Okay. I didn't know that was a wood. That's the second part of my not understanding what's happening.
It's like
so this is a very unique sort of Australian wood then.
New Zealand.
Or New Zealand wood.
New Zealand. Yeah, it's like the Manuka honey. It's you know, the bees make the flower, make the honey out of the Manuka flower, and then This is
Maybe
smoke from the
maybe it's
Manuka
the
wood.
smoke that's too much. Maybe
I
it's that,
see.
it's that character.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not the amount. Do you like that character from the
Yeah, because
Manuka
I've
wood?
tried this, like I said before, I've tried this with beechwood, I've tried this with peach, apple, oak, hickory, anything
Everything
you
but-
imagine that's
everything but
normal US
cherry wood.
market. Cherry wood, yeah.
And
Oh.
this is the profile that speaks to
Yeah.
you. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Now that you mention that, it's a little bit. If you've had that Dogfish Head Palo Santo Marron,
Yeah, I love that beer.
yeah, that's super. That's too intense for me. The Manuka is maybe like in that family of aroma and flavor, but it's maybe like 25%, a quarter or a third of what that Palo Santo was in intensity.
Right.
But it's maybe in that family, if that makes any sense.
I wonder what would happen if you added the Manuka honey as well in the to dry
I
out.
actually do have a plan to make a honey brown out of
Yeah.
a smoked honey brown out of Manuka honey and the Manuka smoked.
That's for another
please,
episode.
please send that. Please send some of that into us. That'll be freaking awesome. I will
Yeah.
love that.
I definitely will. So for the rest of the recipe, so like I said, the 5% of the Manuka smoked malt. The rest is just base malt.
Huh.
And then we got some advanced hop products. So I used a 10 mil hop shot at 60 minutes. Then I got 45
Do you know
IBUs.
what variety of hops that is, or if that's just a hop shot? Like they don't give you a variety.
It's from
It's a
Yakima Valley
liquid-
hops. They just listed as a CTZ extract.
Liquid
CTZ. Okay,
extract,
gotcha.
yeah. Just gets you your bitterness.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So then 45 IBUs of Chinook at 60 minutes.
Wow.
And then 28 IBU of Eclipse at 40 minutes.
Wow.
Okay.
And then, yeah, the Duvel yeast, Belgian Golden Strong.
Oh,
Good
okay.
choice.
Wow. I wonder what
You
would
said
happen.
we'd be surprised about
Yeah.
your ABV. What did you say? What did you estimate? Did
Oh,
you
yeah.
measure or estimate your ABV?
I
And what
measured.
was
It's
it?
4.
9.1.
Oh,
Tastes like
So
it.
it's a double IPA then, essentially.
Yeah, basically.
And that was that was definitely intentional. Let me bring up my session notes. I'll give you the exact numbers.
Now I know why you're in a one-man homebrew club.
Yeah.
Now you can't get kicked out for bringing this in.
it's a
So-
Belgian beer. You got to have a little alcohol in there.
Sure.
1081 was the OG,
Wow.
and 1013 was the final.
Trying to abuse our livers here without us knowing it.
That's wild.
Well, I'm drinking sake because I'm out of that stuff.
All right.
I'm-
I wonder what would happen if you mixed the Belgian yeast, did a dual yeast fermentation, mixed the Belgian yeast with a more neutral, like London or a
San Diego
Chico.
super yeast.
Yeah, just something more neutral to kind of
Dry it
dull
out
the
more.
effect of how, not necessarily just to dry it out more, but to dull the effect of the Belgian-y aspect of it, which pulls away from the hops to me. And the smoke is already fighting with the hops a little bit, but it's,
Yeah.
in a way they're fairly harmonious and getting there. But yeah, dialing back the smoke, maybe 20%, like JP said, maybe even
Yeah, I definitely agree
more,
with
maybe
that.
even cut it in
I
half and see what happens.
don't know. I don't know that I would want to dial back the smoke. I love the intensity of the smoke in this. If you're going to make a smoked beer, I think you just own it and make it a smoked beer.
No.
And I really liked the level of smoke in this.
Well, make two versions, like make a 10-gallon batch and pull off the wort, 5 gallons of the wort, and then steep another, a couple percent of the smoked malt in the second half, and then ferment them out and see and enter them both in competitions and see what wins. I don't know.
That's a good point. And send them both to Dr. Homebrew. Make one for me and one for JP.
Yeah, you
And
got to
we'll
make the
see
beers
which one scores better.
specifically dialed into our each particular tastes. And then,
No, I'm just saying, but it's a good point because some phenol, the smoke and phenol is so divisive, right? And it's one of those things that everyone's got their own threshold for what they think is good. versus what they think is, band-aidy or medicinal or not so good. And it would be fascinating to, if you did that, or if someone were to do that and send in a couple of different smoked beers that we could judge kind of back to back, for example, to see like what everyone's perception of that would be, because once you're in this kind of territory, it's very divisive, and what kind of scores you get in competition start to reflect people's personal palates more than what the objective guidelines are, just because of how that's going to hit everyone's palate.
But or even the order of the judging, because you are in a flight of 10 smoked beers and you get hit by one that's just massive, and then you taste one that's lighter. It's like, oh, that one's better, but it may not really be better. It's just you got blown away by one, and then it's like, oh, I detected less here.
I think that might have happened in tonight's show, for example.
Because I'm trying to go slightly less smoky and more dank on the hop profile with this. So
then maybe don't back off the smoke, but maybe 10 or 20% then on that malt. And that sounds like it'll save you like a ton of money if it's as expensive as you say. Back off like 20%. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like this is like a Sisyphusian exercise. I don't know, man. I don't know that you're going to get out of it what you want, but it's the journey, not the destination. And I appreciate that very much.
So it seems like you like some interesting hop characters there too. I don't use Eclipse that much, but it's supposed to have, a little pine needle and some zesty citrus and stuff. And
yeah, it's like
that's a good
I don't
choice
know.
for flavor.
When I opened the package of it, it kind of smelled like it's the best way to describe the scent off of it was like super concentrated Chinook kind of.
Right. Big grapefruity, pungent.
Very dank. Very
dank. Yeah. Resin.
Sounds good. I think it's a good choice. Anything else? Anything else to approach either on Justin's side or Jason's side or our side, or are we done? Can we cut him loose?
We can be done.
I think we can cut Jason's club loose.
The whole club is leaving now.
Yes. The whole club is bailing out on this show right now.
Yeah, Jason, do you have anything for us? Any other questions or clarification?
No, not on this beer. I have some. I have a few more beers I'll be brewing up here. I'll send off to you guys some interesting.
Cool.
Nice. That'll be
Maybe
great.
I'll send that maple bacon beer and an absinthe beer I make and a couple
Ooh,
others.
that'd be
Yeah,
cool.
I remember that pink voodoo donut bottle. I
Yeah.
saved it for a long time because it's such a really unique bottle from Rogue.
It's a shame that the contents of that bottle were not that great.
Well,
It was a little too much.
Aren't very good either. Anyway, Blue Star is better, but that's just my opinion.
Oh, I like voodoo donuts.
Have you been to Blue Star?
I've had that too. Yeah, they're good.
Whatever.
They're better.
Krispy Kreme.
I just remember waiting in line for voodoo donuts after NHC Portland and staring at the picture of Kenny Rogers on the wall there. And yeah, it's just, it's just a cool place. There was a line out the door at 1 a.m. or whatever time it was. And
Yeah.
it's just that kind of a scene.
It is that kind of scene. All right, we're going to take
That's
a quick
cool.
break, everybody. We'll be right back with some more beers here on Dr. Homebrew. Stay tuned. All right, thanks for hanging around, everybody. We are joined with Sean. Sean, welcome back to the show, my dude.
Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, of course, man.
Welcome back.
Thanks for sending in some more beers. So last time you had the salted caramel porter, I believe it was?
Yeah, that is
All right.
correct.
What do you have for us this time?
This is smoked cherry porter.
It's 2 smoked beers on one show, Cooper. What do you think?
It's the battle of the smoke. It's a smoke out. We're having a session here. Yeah.
Yeah, only if this was 420. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just poured it. That is all carbonation. Maybe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I like a smoked beer, man. Don't get me wrong. So I'm ready for it. And you said smoked cherry porter. Is it cherry wood? Well, no. I don't want to know. We're gonna start. And we'll figure it out later. I'll guess what the cherry is. Cooper, why don't you rip us off first here, buddy?
I'll rip you off.
Yeah.
You didn't notice that your pocket just got picked.
Oh, you don't even have it open yet. Okay. All right. I
I'm
didn't know.
opening it.
I didn't know I was doing that. Too
She's
fast. What happened
she's
over there?
it's a gusher.
Uh-oh. Well, then Shar, you can go first.
All right. So, Sean, thanks for sending in your beer. On the Zoom thing, I can see your hello. My name is tag. It says Inigo Montoya. You killed my father, prepared to die. So that's pretty cool. Are you in a homebrew club?
Yes, I am. I am the Mad Zymergus with Mr. Inigo Montoya, Brian Cooper here.
I see he just changed his Zoom name. So very cool. Yeah, you look familiar. I know I've met you in the past, but not everyone in the podcast knows who you are. Or always want to make sure everyone gets a chance to plug their club. Thank you for sending this beer in. I enjoyed this one. Brian just kind of, we alluded to this just a second ago, if not outright said this. I opened the bottle up, and it was a gusher, and it was a fairly aggressive gusher. And I opened the second bottle up just now, thinking, all right, well, maybe it's a little bit different, but it was also a fairly aggressive gusher. And we can talk about that a little more later. Usually, a gusher indicates some kind of wild yeast infection or something. I didn't really get a lot of infection character in this, but I did get some sort of excuse me, geez, less flavor or aroma than I really wanted from a beer that's a cherry smoked porter. Aroma, I get sort of a low smoke, low malt, dark malt, base malt, but whatever malt there would be there. I get sort of one of the questions I'll ask you later. The cherry smoked porter, I assumed meant there was cherry and smoke, but it might have been a cherry wood. The aroma to me comes across more like a cherry wood smoke, as does the flavor. Sort of overall, the aroma was at a low level. I didn't get any off aromas like you might expect from something with a wild yeast, but in general, even after this is sat out, it's about 9:30 p.m. Pacific time. I pulled this out at about 6:30. Probably pulled this out of the fridge at 6 and judged this around 6:45, 7 o'clock. So it's been sitting out for a while, and I was hoping I would get more aroma, but the aroma is overall sort of a lot lower than I would have expected from this beer. So I gave this a 7 out of 12. Appearance 3 out of 3. It's a very dark brown color. It's low persistent tan head. It's always hard to tell how clear a dark beer is, but you can always kind of tell by tilting the glass and looking around the edges. And it looks pretty clear to me. So again, 3 out of 3. Flavor starts off with a medium to high degree of smoke. And coming back to it, after a couple hours, I concur with that. There's a low bitterness, low roast, and dark malts. Balances toward the smoke. It's very well attenuated, which is unfortunately also consistent with something that wild yeast has gotten into. Finish is long and balanced towards smoke. I don't know, after it's sat here for a while, I'd say the finish is real long, but it's at least a medium length, and it definitely balanced towards smoke. Low ethanol. I gave this 12 out of 20 for flavor. Mouthfeel 5 out of 5. Medium warming, medium body, medium carbonation. There is sort of a low astringency from the smoke character. As I mentioned in reviewing the beer earlier in this show, a little bit of astringency just goes with the territory for smoked beer. So that's not, to me, it's not an off flavor. It's not an off mouthfeel. Nothing that would cause me to not give it a 5 out of 5. Overall impression, I gave it a 6 for a total of 33. I think it was an interesting beer that I enjoyed a lot. But less for something that I love porter. I love smoked beer. I love fruit beer. And I don't know if this is, cherry wood smoked, or if it's a wood smoked porter that has cherry added to it. But in either event, there should be more flavor in this beer than there is. And to me, the fact that I had 2 gushers and that Cooper he opened that one and he had to run off camera and deal with that. That unfortunately, I mean, we've all been there. I mean, I've had my share. I mean, it's happened, in 30 years of homebrew, and it's happened to me. I probably take me more than 2 hands to count the number of times it's happened to me.
And judging in competitions, right?
And judging in competition. Well, when you count judging in comps, I mean, there's just literally dozens of times that's happened. When you open one and you have kind of that slow creep up the bottle, you wonder if it's wild yeast. When you open one and less than a second after you open it, it's coming out of the top. That's a pretty clear sign there's a wild yeast infection, or something that some sort of infection. And when it's happened to all the bottles, like it's happened to us, what that tells me is it's not a packaging variation where you might have had a handful of bottles that weren't totally clean. It tells me something probably got in your fermenter and started chewing up your beer, and then it got into all of your bottles. I was probably overly generous with a 33. And the sad thing is, I bet this beer, had it not gotten attacked by wild yeast, was probably, a high 30s beer. I really would have liked to have tasted what this should have been like and what you intended it to be. But, no matter, despite our best efforts, it happens to all of us. And that's sort of my educated guess about what had happened. I appreciate you sharing it with us, and I can kind of tell from what I've tasted what this was supposed to have been. And I just don't think that we got what you had really intended for it to have been. But in any event, thank you very much, Sean. And Brian Inigo Montoya,
because mine did not do the same thing as yours. It opened fine and there was no gush at all. So that was kind of surprising to me.
It's so weird.
I didn't get a gush either, but if you can see the neck of this bottle here, it's mostly foam, and it's been that way since Brian was talking 4 years ago. He started talking 4 years ago.
Blah 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 blah.
Moved.
That probably is packaging variation.
Right. It died down a little bit. In this glass here, but it was there is some thing, because that's not like a normal.
I think there is some bottle variation going on. If his didn't, Brian's did both times. JP's.
Ooh, look at JP's. Yeah,
slightly.
That's a giant.
It's very,
shouldn't be that huge, and it shouldn't be that persistent.
That's what she said. But
or he. I mean, we don't discriminate on this show. We love everyone of all orientations.
All right, Cooper, go ahead, please.
Okay. So the first one I opened, it was more like JP's. It just slowly crept up the neck, and I poured it, and I was like, oh, okay, it pours a pretty good size head. And then I set it down, and I watched it. I kept looking, slowly creeping up the neck, like his was there. So, and then the one tonight I judge is like what happened to Brian's both times. So I think there is a little bottle variation going on here, and just being that is different from bottle to bottle. You might want to either use new bottles if you're bottling for competition, or just really carefully clean your bottles and use a PBW and Star San on them to get them nice and clean, and inspect each bottle. Just make sure there's nothing in the bottom of it as you're bottling. If you're using reused bottles, which I encourage, you can clean them and reuse them, and I rarely have had a problem. But something a little different from bottle to bottle here. Or it could also be if you're bottling from a bottling bucket, and this is a bottle conditioned beer, there could be insufficient mixing of the sugar water with your batch, where it's more in the the first beers that you bottled and less in the later ones that you bottled. For example, if you're pouring from a spigot that comes out the bottom of a bottling bucket. That remains to be known and discussed, but there's a lot of different ways that can happen. So opened it, had a nice hiss, and it did creep out the neck a little bit like a snake. There was some dense foam in the neck. I think I noted that later when I started noticing that. In the nose, I'm getting a very rich smoky character up front with some just kind of general dark malt alongside that. It's not screaming like robust porter. It's just kind of a general dark malt character. Kind of low, but there's also a little bit of a kind of a burnt smoky character to it, with it's maybe just the smoke playing off the dark malts. No hops noted. I'm finding only the faintest hint of any cherry fruit. There are some fruit esters underneath from the yeast that are fine, but I'm not really smelling a lot of cherry, and I just tasted it there too. But and we'll get into that flavor. There's not a whole lot of cherry in the flavor either. Appearance wise, it's a rich black color, virtually opaque, with hints of clear reddish highlights only at the very corners. They start out with a dense mousse-like tan head. In the first sample, it persisted pretty well, but in this one that gushed a little more, it fell flat pretty quickly. I noticed that difference as well. 2 out of 3 for appearance, just for that aspect. In the flavor, the smoked malt character is high, but it becomes complemented by other flavors here. There's some, a little, I would say kind of a bittersweet, dark baker's chocolate kind of character to it. There's a medium light sweetness in there that kind of plays off it in a kind of a nice way. No real hops, just a low hop bitterness. But the impression of bitterness coming from those darkest malts and a little bit of smoke. Now this is funny too, because I was telling Sean on the break, I judged this beer first the other night before the Belgian IPA, because I just wanted the hoppy beer after the dark one for some reason.
Right.
And like, so I think I had the opposite effect of Brian, where like this one was the first smoky beer I had, and I was like, wow, that's really smoky. And then I tasted the other one. I was like, wow, that's not as smoky. But tonight I'm having the reverse effect. Like that first, the Belgian IPA, the smoked Belgian IPA was pretty smoky. And this one, to me, just perception wise right now, I'm recognizing as not as smoky, but I'm realizing that it's just my perceptions and the ordering of the beers, which is messing with my head a little bit and throwing things off. But I thought, wow, this is overly smoky and intense. And anytime you get a judging order where you have a pretty intense beer as the first beer in your flight, it's not always going to do so well. But whether it's high alcohol, something that's just really richly malty, and you're just not ready for that, your first beer of the flight, and you judge it's like, wow, something's really poking out really strongly here. And then you get to the next beer, that stuff kind of mellows out. And as you're going through a set of beers in a certain style, sometimes that can happen. It's like in competition, like, and as an entrant, you can't control the order that things go when you're in a competition, but it's the luck of the draw. You just get what you get. And if the beer is really good, it should stand up on its own, and still, like, the really good beer should pass through. With a really well-balanced beers should make it when you have 3 judges that know what they're doing at a table. But sometimes just being that lucky or unlucky first or last entrant in a flight, you could, and then the last of the flight, sometimes it's like, everything's all washed out. It's hard to pick out things, and it's harder especially with a really long flight, 10 or 12 beers, you're just like struggling to get anything. And sometimes alcohol becomes a factor. If you're drinking too much of the samples, you really have to pace yourself. It's crazy. I mean, on this show too, we do most 4 beers in a night, and we, drink samples that would be appropriate for a competition. So that's just a little side tangent there, but it's interesting, like how that I'm just observing my own weakness or my own like limited, ability as a judge to know like, wow, like that really affected me tasting this one second tonight as opposed to first the other night. So an interesting side note. But where was I?
Let's give it a score. I think.
Charlie Malt. The cherry is just very low in here, and that's the same. I never got a whole lot of cherry out of here, so I was left wondering, like Brian was, whether there's a cherry wood smoked malt in the beer, and it's just called a cherry, a smoked cherry porter. I don't know, but it's just, if there is any cherry fruit, it's really buried under all the other elements there. The beer is balanced with the smoke. It has this pretty dry finish. That's kind of where it's at in the flavor. Mouthfeel wise, medium, full bodied. I think there's a fullness that comes from just the smokiness and the richness of it, but it's not super heavy. It's more medium, I guess. And it's somewhat creamy despite all that's going on here. The high carbonation, there's no obvious astringency here, but it still has a fairly aggressive attack from all the smoked malts. Not getting any alcohol warmth that's noticeable. So overall, yes, coming back to the aroma at the end is still pretty smoky, but as you go along, the smoke kind of goes less. And but there's something that I think what's going on is that the porter aspect of it is just not shining through quite enough for the style, whether it's the smoke fighting with that or something else that's coming up, or wild yeast like Brian mentioned. I don't know, but something is like dulling the dark malt aspect of this beer that's making it just seem like generic dark malt and not like rich, somewhat roasty or just toasted chocolatey rich, dark malt. The complexity is just kind of missing almost, so, or just buried perhaps. But I mean, the style itself seems pretty nice from what I can tell, and it seems like it was good ingredients used and not too bad at brewing practices. It could be either bottling or, as Brian said, maybe something got loose in the ferment there. It's hard to tell, but if you find maybe dialing back the smoke a bit and bringing up the porter aspects, like bringing up especially the cherry, if there's cherry declared, if you want to declare cherry as a fruit, you're going to bring that up. And I think that would be interesting with this. I think that I wanted to taste cherry and I just really didn't get much at all, or if any. So let that special ingredient shine through if it's declared, and just keep trying this. It's an interesting idea for a beer. It's another one where there's a lot going on, but you could find a balance that would work for this. I just don't think this one does. I landed at a 27 on the beer, and I think it's good. It's drinkable. It's smooth for a smoked beer, and also a dark beer, which could fight with the smoke a bit. So, but yeah, something is not quite letting the dark, the porter-like characters shine through for me. So that's where I'm at with it. But I'd love to hear JP's impressions of this beer next.
Oh wow, look at that. It's almost like we've been doing this for a long time.
He's a beer judge too.
I sort of echo what everyone's saying. It is a little muted. So I do think that something got in there and sort of chewed through what would normally be unfermentables. That led to sort of an overcarbonation, and then so some of the flavor profile that you were implying by the name or intending to be there just aren't there. It's sort of, I don't know, like a light stout where it's like a little more roasty than I would think a porter would be, but I don't know. We'll get into the recipe in a second, but yeah, I mean, overall it's not awful. Like I wouldn't really know that maybe something was wrong just by the flavors. It's just that carbonation was a dead giveaway.
Yeah.
So that's good. I think that's like it's a positive note. where it's not like, oh, it's really phenol, and maybe some of the smoke characters hiding some of those contaminant notes as well. Overall, yeah, my gut tells me it's cherry wood smoked, but I don't know to be sure. I don't know why it would be a smoked cherry porter if it was cherry smoked wood. So maybe there's supposed to be cherries in there. Maybe that's where maybe some of the wild yeast got some more food, is from the cherries. We'll see. I don't know. We'll check the recipe. But overall, I think it's a good beer. I think the flavors are there, but again, it's distorted a little bit because of something, either too much carbonation. Maybe there's a carbonation variance between the bottles, and that's what we're seeing. But I think the bubbles are like way too tight and way too long lasting for it to just be carbonation, batch to batch. So yeah, I don't know, hard to say. But Sean, why don't you give us your recipe and we'll start there.
It does have a nice label though too, with the
label's cool.
a tree on it, so that might be a hint there. I don't know.
Yeah, I apologize. I need to grab my phone real quick.
Yeah, that's all right, man. Don't worry about it.
No worries.
Tasting it now, I do get a cherry sweetness. It's the sweetness that's coming through. You know what I mean? And so it's like
I don't get that.
There's an extra dryness there. So I do think that there's something there, but I do get a cherry sweetness sort of like wrapped around the middle part.
There is a sweetness there, and you could talk yourself into cherry, but it's kind of hard for me to do that.
Okay, so there is actually cherries in this. At the time, I couldn't find any fresh cherries, which I would have liked, so I had to go with frozen. And they're actually smoked with cherry wood on my grill. So I smoked the cherries on the grill, but I didn't realize how much smoke flavor would come through on that. And so at first it was very prominent.
Okay, so this is blowing my mind. It's a smoked cherry porter.
Yes, it's actually smoked cherries.
Fascinating. So the malt is not smoked, only the cherries were smoked.
Well, there was some smoked malt, but it was so little that it actually, you couldn't even taste it before I added the smoked cherry. So it's
Understood.
It's 76% Maris Otter, 5% caramel, 5% caramel, 120, some flaked oats, 3.6%, 3.4% black patent, and 3.4% chocolate, and then 1.8% midnight wheat. And then that was the smoked cherry malt is what it was, 1.8%. So it was very little. I was kind of warned that it was very strong, so not to put so much in.
Cherry wood smoked malt is very intense. Yes.
Yeah. So
It's
it was
very tasty, but very intense. Correct.
Wise
So-
to dial that back.
putting what I put in, I kind of know now that I could add a little more and it probably would come out. But because of that, and I didn't get any of that smoked flavor, that's why I decided to smoke the cherries. And it came out pretty strong at first. Hop wise, it's Hallertau Magnum, 60 minutes, just 6.68 ounces, and then an ounce of Fugels at 15 minutes. And then I did add some artificial cherry flavoring, just because I think I smoked a lot of the flavor out of the cherries when I smoked them. I just smoked them too long. And
I'm wondering what the cherries looked like after you have pictures of the.
They look kind of like prunes almost, like So
well, yeah, you probably made essentially you made raisins.
Yeah, no,
Cherry raisins.
You caramelized some of the sugars in that,
Yeah.
and
right. And so it didn't. And now this was one of my. I did four Christmas beers for friends and family, and this was one of them I made. So this is actually about 171 days right now. been sitting. So it's matured a little bit. It's actually mellowed out from when it was from the beginning, which I liked. I actually like it a little better now than when it was at first. It was I was kind of disappointed because it was so smoky at first, but now it's not as, I mean, the smoke's there, but it wasn't like overpowering when I first made it.
Yeah, it's fairly smooth in some ways. It's enjoyable for what it is. It's not not screaming cherry by any sense, but it's
Oh,
a
and then
dark,
it's
good dark beer.
1968 Y yeast
Okay.
is the yeast. So that's pretty much it.
How many pounds of cherries were there in this again?
I think it was, I didn't have it quite, I don't remember putting it down here, but it was, oh, no, I'm sorry. It was 16 ounces.
Well,
So
okay.
frozen, they were frozen cherries, just like packages of frozen cherries. I would have rather had fresh ones, but they just weren't in season. So
Yeah, it might be better to start off with at least a few pounds of fruit in a beer like this to stand up to that dark malt, and maybe not abuse it quite as much. But yeah, it was an interesting experiment, and you're doing some creative and fun things with your beers. As I know, you're a fairly new brewer, and you have this energy. It's it's a little infectious to me. It's like it makes me want to get back into that. Like, let's do something just really different and twist something around and do something fun that just sounds interesting and see where it goes. And maybe at first it didn't taste great, but now it's drinkable, and it's a good beer. It's a smooth dark beer. Would I enter it in a competition as a cherry smoked porter? No, but I don't know that I entered in a competition, but you can drink it and enjoy it. But
no, I mean, in all honesty, this was my least favorite beer that I brewed out of everything I've done. It was the one beer that I brewed, and I was actually kind of like the first beer I was disappointed in. It just didn't do what I was hoping for. And I mean, I like you said, it's drinkable, and like it's not dumper, but it was like the one I was just like, all right.
You know what, man? I really respect the creativity of smoking the cherries, and that's one of the great things about home brewing, right? Is you can do stuff. I was expecting like a smoked malt something, but it would never have occurred to me to do that, and that's genius. And that's a really fun thing to play with. To just smoke the fruit itself, and that's just super cool.
Yeah.
And sometimes you try those experiments and they don't quite end up the way you want, but that's okay because you have fun doing it and you're playing with things, and you can either go further down that rabbit hole and fine tune that, or say, you know what, that was fun to try. I'm not going to do it again. Either way, it's your choice and it's fine. And that's one of the great things about homebrewing. It's just the experimenting and the trying new stuff and just playing around with things that nobody would do at a commercial level, because no one at like a brew pub or tap room or something is going to go out and take like a literal ton of cherries and smoke them.
Right.
And you recognize too that you needed to add a little more cherry flavor, and you tried to get a little more in there with extract.
Exactly.
The thing was, I smoked them for like an hour, so it was like it was way too long, and it was experimental. I didn't know. I was just like, that's how I smoke a lot of my stuff, and it turns out fine. But when it comes to like putting it in a beer and you want that cherry flavor, I kind of smoked the cherry flavor out of it, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you going to do it again, do you think, that way?
I might, and if I did, I would probably only do it for like 10 minutes or something to try and get a little bit of that infusion in there, but then to try and not dry them out and keep that flavor, and probably do a little bit more too than
because I mean, I also wonder what it's doing for you. The smoking the cherries versus just adding smoked malt and cherries. I wonder if there's a big enough difference to like warrant, potentially drying them out or whatever.
No, yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, it's just something that it's
cool,
convenient, and it's easy for me to do. Like you said, like on a commercial level, it's like, no, you're not doing that. But just something where I have the time to actually try it I was like, I'm just like, why not? So
Yeah, I definitely want to encourage you to keep, doing creative stuff like that. And this is the thing, like sometimes like we sort of try to help people fine tune processes without actually knowing if that's something that they give a shit about. You know what I mean? In
No,
my head,
exactly.
I'm like, I don't know if the juice is worth a squeeze to do this. You could probably get a better flavor profile doing it just the traditional way, but that's why we homebrew. It's that fun, creative outlet to let us smoke cherries and put them in a beer. Who does that?
And that's maybe the first time I've heard someone use the phrase "the juice is worth the squeeze." It actually makes sense and is appropriate for what is happening in the conversation.
Right. I mean, it's like telling an artist who like has a technique where they just splatter paint against the canvas to like, maybe you could just actually just use the paintbrush on the canvas, or
Have you tried connecting the splatter dots? Have you tried doing that? Maybe
have you tried feeding the tuna feeding the mayonnaise to the tuna?
Sean, do you have any questions for these guys?
Not really. This was just for me. This was an experimental beer, a process. Like I was just trying to put something together and see what it worked. And and I can be honest with myself, and like I'm not 100% satisfied with how this turned out, and I'm okay with that because I learned. And
there you go.
Going forward, will I do it again? Who knows? If I do, it definitely won't be as long as I did, and I'll learn from how I did that. And
is it all in bottles?
It's all in bottles.
Yeah.
It's all in
Because
bottles.
if this was in a keg, you could probably add some more cherry flavoring to it and get something that might play a little bit more, but it's mellowing out, and the bottle conditioning is probably helping it because it's not oxidized. It's not,
and it's strange because like I've tried probably like 10 of these that I have at home, and not one single one has done what yours has done. Like,
weird.
I know it's like I was like tripping out when all yours were like foaming up like that. I'm like, that's so weird.
I wonder if it's the shipping. Like if there is something in the bottles, I wonder if just the heat caught it and sort of was able to,
Well, I don't think that was because I just drove it 30 seconds down the street to buy it.
Literally,
there's literally no like.
Damn.
I mean, they were cold when I brought them over, so I don't know.
That's weird.
I really put it right in the fridge. Yeah.
Remind me, Sean, when did you add the smoked cherries? Was it in the boil or after the boil?
No, this was in the secondary. So
that may have been
7 days after.
That may be what brought something in.
I don't think you'd want to boil the cherries, but where would you add them, Brian?
God, it's so hard. I would probably, if I were going to do this, because fruit, especially fruit like that, is so susceptible to bacteria, wild yeast, and stuff getting in. If I were going to smoke the cherries and put them in, I'd smoke them, and I might take them. I wouldn't want to put them in hot. I might try to put them in some sort of sanitized container where I could seal it and try to keep some. It's so hard because you wouldn't want to put them right in because you don't want to put that hot stuff right into your fermenting beer. But like anything in the air that gets in those smoked cherries is gonna, even for like an hour or two while it's cooling, while it's warm, that's the perfect time for bacteria and yeast to start multiplying. Unless maybe I sprayed them with some Star San and put them in a Ziploc bag and tried to force some air out of it, and then an hour or two later dumped them in. I know I'm just kind of making stuff up on the fly for how to try to keep wild yeast and bacteria out. I suspect that's where they came from.
Yeah, well, normally what I do is this was kind of a rush job because I did 4 beers in like 15 days or something like that this was all for, because I had to have it all for Christmas. So I made them all.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of rushing. But normally what I do for fruit is I put them in a vacuum seal bag.
Yeah.
I freeze them.
Yep.
And then I sous vide them at 149 for an hour. And I haven't had any issues with bacteria in my beers. But this was like a rush job, and I don't remember if I star sans them or whatever I did. It wasn't my normal process of getting into the second.
Your normal process is a really good process, and I would, if you did this again, I would do that with the smoked cherries, because to me that's like that time frame between the time you're done smoking and the time they cool off and go in the secondary. Just going from primary to secondary is a risk factor for adding wild yeast or bacteria.
Yeah.
And then you add some fruit that you've smoked, which and it's at that warm temperature, and yeast and bacteria like that.
What temperature
90
was
to
this,
100
the smoking at? I wonder, what was it?
Oh, 275, probably somewhere in that range.
Yeah, I mean, that should
but
kill
they're
any
gonna
wild
cool,
yeasts
but they're
on
gonna
there.
cool down though, Coop. And then kind of my thinking, Brian, is not during the smoking, because that's gonna kill stuff, but the time between the smoking is done and the time they've cooled off enough to go in the secondary, that's where you're gonna acquire wild yeast and bacteria.
You could add them hot to the secondary. It's not going to make that big a difference.
Yeah, I mean that's a thought. Just put them in, and
Right off
you'll
the
shock.
smoker.
I mean, part of the point of the secondary is get the yeast out, and it's going to be hot, and it's going to raise the temperature of the secondary. But
A little bit, yeah.
so in some ways, so what, right?
Yeah.
Well, you can also cold smoke them too.
Yeah.
Lower the temperature a little
Yeah,
bit.
I honestly, it's almost been 6 months since I brewed this, so it's like I need to take notes on it, and
it's like
I forgot exactly.
We've all been there. You're trying to get stuff done, like you're saying. You're trying to brew a bunch for Christmas. You're in a hurry. You're doing stuff.
Yeah,
and I bet the others are fantastic, but you're also experimenting. But you just don't have time because it's Christmas, and on top of brewing, you have all the Christmas stuff you do, and you want to do it, and it's fun. But it's that whole Thanksgiving to Christmas time is so busy for everybody.
What is the Lacquerhead reference?
It's Primus song.
Okay, yeah.
So a lot of my beers were named after Primus songs.
Nice.
And that was kind of the theme that we were doing at the time. So
Cool.
Nice. All right, Sean, we'll let you go, man.
Right on.
I think we've squeezed all the juice out of this fruit. Thanks, Sean. I appreciate it, man.
No, thanks again for having me.
Cheers. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come right back, wrap this ship up. Hang on, it's Dr. Homebrew. All right, thanks for sticking around, everyone. Just a quick wrap up here, mainly because I forgot the break on the last show. 2 smoke beers on one show. I don't know if I want to do that again. That was a lot.
That was quite a session there, dude.
Yeah,
I'm down for doing it again.
I like smoke beer. Don't get me wrong, but these were like, whew.
I like to challenge my
Wow,
palate, but sometimes you just want an alien Bud Light instead of this stuff.
Is this
Anyway.
when I should hold this
No,
up?
it's
This is
not, because we had already talked about it before the break. Not talking about it. And Cooper knows he's being an asshole. Everybody, thanks a lot for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And until next time, take it easy.
Cheers.